Let's set the record straight. Women aren't as mysterious as they seem. Complicated, no doubt, but impossible to understand. Not even close. Every woman, no matter how poised, confident, or unreadable, has emotional pressure points, hidden soft spots that, when touched with awareness, cut through the noise and hit something deeper. This isn't about manipulation. This is about presence, stoic presence. While most men waste energy trying to please, chase, or prove, you'll move with quiet power, calm, grounded, and unforgettable. In this video, we're uncovering the 9 emotional vulnerabilities. Most men never notice not to play games, but to stop being played. Some will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about attraction. Some will explain why she pulled away. And a few might just give you the clarity you've been looking for all along. So if you're tired of being confused by her silence, her signals, her shifts in emotion, and you're ready to stop reacting and start leading, this is for you. Click that subscribe button right now, because we're not here to teach charm. We're here to teach you how to hold the frame, not to be the nice guy, but the right man, the man who moves without noise and becomes the one she never forgets. Let's dive in. Number 1, confidence that doesn't ask for permission. Let's start with the truth. Most men don't learn until it's too late. What actually captivates a woman isn't noise. It's presence, not performance, not peacocking, but that quiet, grounded energy that doesn't flinch. Behavioral psychology shows that people naturally sync to the emotional tone of the person they're around. So when you enter a room with neediness, anxiety, and over-explanation, she picks up that frequency, and slowly, she detaches. Not because she wants to hurt you, but because that energy doesn't feel safe. But when you show up steady, calm, and self-possessed, without needing her reaction to validate your worth, something shifts. You stop chasing her approval. You stop proving yourself. You just are. And that's when the dynamic changes. Because here's the paradox. She only starts to feel safe around you the moment you stop seeking her reassurance. It's not the loud man that pulls her in. It's the man who doesn't flinch when she tests him, who doesn't collapse when she withdraws, who doesn't need external permission to feel like a man. Most men overtalk. They overpromise. They overdeliver. Not because they're strong, but because they're afraid of being forgotten. But what Stoicism teaches is this: don't move for validation. Don't act to be seen. Hold your line. A woman doesn't crave dominance. She craves containment, your ability to remain grounded when she's emotional, uncertain, or chaotic. Stillness is what speaks to her deepest instincts. Direction, not noise. Presence, not pressure. Because when you can sit in silence, when you can breathe through discomfort, when you can stay centered while she's spinning, you send a message stronger than any compliment. You are your own foundation. You're not here to win her over. You're here to walk your path, and if she wants to walk beside you, good. But you will not carry her. That's not just attractive. That's magnetic. It's addictive. Because confidence isn't about walking louder. It's about walking with clarity. It's not about convincing her. It's about not needing to. True confidence doesn't announce itself. It just arrives calm, composed, unshackable. And when you carry that kind of energy, You don't just stand out in the room. You own it. And more importantly, you live in her memory long after you've left. Number 2, being understood without explaining everything. At a certain point in life, something changes. Emotional outbursts fade. Not because we stop feeling, but because we finally understand the cost of explaining ourselves to people who never truly wanted to hear us. For many women, especially those who've carried emotional weight for decades, silence becomes a form of protection. Not peaceful silence, but the kind born from exhaustion. Exhaustion from being dismissed, from being misunderstood, from being told they're too emotional when all they wanted was to be felt. This is where most men fail. Not because they're cruel, but because they're distracted. They rush to fix what's not broken. They plan a response before she finishes speaking. They avoid the tension of her emotions, mistaking discomfort for danger. But the man who pauses, who doesn't flinch in her silence, who doesn't demand an explanation, but simply stays present, that man is different. I once knew a woman in her late 60s. She'd lived through 2 marriages, lost more than she spoke of, and wore strength like armor. She told me the moment she fell in love again wasn't during a grand gesture or deep conversation. It was when a man noticed she wasn't herself and just sat beside her. No probing, no advice, just presence. And in that stillness, she said, she finally felt seen. For the first time in years, the Stoics taught that wisdom isn't found in endless speech, but in deep perception, to sense, without the urge to control, to observe, without needing to label, to be still, not passive, but aware. Modern men have lost this art. They've been taught to perform, to fix, to chase. But what many women truly crave isn't answers, it's space. Space to feel without being judged, to unravel without being solved. The deepest entry point into a woman's heart isn't charm. It isn't clever lines. It's quiet, consistent attentiveness, the kind that sees without staring, that hears without interrupting. It's the strength to witness her pain without shrinking, to hold presence, not solutions, to stay rooted when she's unraveling. Because in a world that rushes to speak, the man who chooses to listen, truly listen, becomes unforgettable, not because of what he says, but because of how deeply he sees her without needing to fix her. Number 3, masculine silence in the right moments. There are 2 kinds of silence. One that heals, and one that wounds. The first is rooted in presence, the calm, anchored stillness of a man who doesn't need to react. The second is absence masked as distance, a cold shoulder, a silent punishment, a retreat meant to control. Most men don't know the difference. They go silent to escape conflict, not to master themselves. And that kind of silence, it doesn't earn respect. It triggers fear, confusion, and resentment. But there's another silence, one that radiates from emotional discipline, from the man who doesn't panic when tested, who doesn't scramble to be heard, who doesn't explain, justify, or overreact. That silence is a power few ever embody, because it requires inner command. When faced with emotional tension, most men overtalk. They over-explain. They overpromise. Why? Because they believe control is found in sound. But real control doesn't need noise. Real control is calm in motion. A man who reacts to every emotional spike shows that his inner world is still shaky, and women, even if they don't say it, feel it. Not intellectually, but instinctively. They notice the tremble behind your voice, the pause that isn't grounded, but insecure. But a man who chooses silence not out of pride, but from principle, he's operating from a different level. He doesn't withdraw. He remains, still, grounded, and she feels that difference. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Silence isn't retreat. It's strategy. It's standing firm while the storm circles. It's refusing to waste energy on chaos. When emotions run high, when you're provoked, when she tests your edge, your greatest weapon isn't your words. It's your restraint. The discipline to pause, to breathe, to feel the surge without becoming it. Seneca said, "Speech may be silver, but silence is gold when it is timely." And in the realm of relationships, timely silence is often more powerful than 100 clever lines. It doesn't shout. It resonates. When your silence is rooted in awareness, not avoidance, it commands attention. It demands respect. She may not understand it right away, but she will feel it. Deeply, in a world addicted to noise, true masculine presence is found in stillness, in composure, in not needing to win every argument just to win your peace. And sometimes, that peace begins with saying nothing at all. Number 4, deep eye contact that doesn't flinch. There's something ancient about the way a man holds a gaze, something primal. It doesn't need words. It doesn't need posture or charm. It just is. Deep, steady eye contact, real eye contact has become a lost art. Not the polite glance exchanged at the grocery store, not the fleeting smile to be courteous, but the kind that holds its ground, that stays a second longer when most look away. That moment, that subtle second, is where self-respect lives. It's where confidence is tested, and it's also where most men flinch. I once met a retired Navy officer at a veterans storytelling night. He was in his late 70s. His presence, quiet, steel-eyed, unshakable. He never demanded attention, he just had it. While younger men filled the room with nervous laughter and shallow chatter, he sat still, not distant, not withdrawn, but deeply present. When someone spoke to him, he didn't rush to reply. He didn't interrupt or try to impress. He simply looked at them fully, calmly, and the stillness in his gaze often made others uneasy. That was his strength. His gaze wasn't aggressive. It was honest. It said, "I have nothing to prove. I've already seen more than you know." That's masculine energy in its purest form. Stoic philosophy teaches that true strength begins not when you react, but when you observe. And most men, they lose power because they can't sit still in their own skin. When a woman looks at them, really looks, they panic. They overthink. They second guess. They feel the silence and try to fill it. They shift their posture. They look away. They perform, instead of simply being. But women notice. They won't always say it, but they feel it. That flicker in your eyes, the tension in your shoulders, it all speaks. And what it often says is, "I'm not grounded. I'm not certain. I'm still seeking approval." But a man who can hold her gaze not to seduce, not to dominate, but simply to witness, he becomes unforgettable. Because deep eye contact isn't about attraction, it's about self-mastery. When you can look at her without needing anything in return, without needing validation, without breaking the stillness, you stop being just another man in the room. You become the one who lingers in her memory, not because you impressed her, but because you didn't flinch, because your presence spoke louder than your words ever could. It said, I am here. I am grounded. I am not chasing. I am witnessing. And in a world that's addicted to noise, the man who can meet her eyes and stay still becomes magnetic. Number 5, the need for mysterious depth. There's a truth most men overlook. People are drawn to what they can't fully grasp. Not because it's manipulative, not because it plays games, but because mystery makes the mind wander, and wondering builds desire. In a world drowning in oversharing, the man who doesn't hand over his entire story in one sitting becomes magnetic. He holds something back, not to confuse her, but to respect himself. Most men misunderstand mystery. They confuse it with silence, with avoidance, with vanishing. They think not replying, being vague, or acting detached makes them intriguing. But that's not mystery. That's emotional immaturity covered in cologne. Real mystery isn't about disappearing, it's about depth. Depth that doesn't scream. Depth that doesn't need to be explained. A man grounded in Stoic presence doesn't rush to be understood. He speaks when it matters, and he knows that what's not said often speaks louder than what is. She doesn't want to figure out a man who disappears. She wants to unfold a man who reveals himself with purpose, like reading a book chapter by chapter, like discovering layers that weren't shown at first glance, like knowing that every silence has weight, not because you're hiding something, but because you're not performing for her validation. This is what the Stoics called self-containment, the ability to hold your energy within without giving it away for free. It's not emotional withholding. It's emotional discernment. It means speaking with substance, not noise, listening more than you talk, answering what matters, and letting the rest unfold with time. When you do this, you become the man who leaves a question mark in her mind, a space, a silence, a spark of curiosity she can't shake. That's where true attraction grows, in the space you leave unfilled. Because when you stop oversharing, when you stop trying to be understood all at once, you become unforgettable. You're not trying to be mysterious. You simply are whole. And wholeness doesn't beg to be seen. It simply exists, solid, certain, self-directed. So if you've been chasing attention by pouring out your soul too quickly, stop, breathe. Let her earn each layer of you, not as a test, but as a standard. You don't need to be a mystery. You just need to be deep enough that discovery takes time. And in that time, she won't just see a man. She'll sense a world within him. If this resonates with you, type it below. I lead with depth. Because from now on, you're not here to perform. You're here to anchor. Number 6. Her soft spot for a man with purpose. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." That line hits harder the older you get, because eventually all the noise, the fire, the ambition, the chase starts to fade. And when it does, only one thing remains: purpose. Let's get something straight. A lot of men still believe passion alone makes them powerful. They think loud plans, bold dreams, and constant motion impress her. But passion without direction is just chaos. It's fire with no fireplace. It burns hot, but it doesn't last. It excites for a moment, but it never roots deep. She might be drawn to the energy at first, but what makes her stay, what makes her feel safe, isn't fire. It's foundation. Passion is emotional fuel. Purpose is structural integrity. Passion is what gets you going, but purpose is what keeps you going, especially when life gets quiet, when no one's watching, when things fall apart. That's where most men lose her, because they talk endlessly about what they want to do, but don't move daily toward what actually grounds them. The man she respects isn't trying to impress. He's not flashy. He's aligned. He doesn't ask, "What should I do to look good today?" He asks, "What is mine to control today? What can I shape with focus, not force?" That's Stoic energy. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need her approval. It shows up with or without an audience. And ironically, that's the very energy that draws her in. She can feel it in how he speaks, how he pauses, how he holds tension instead of reacting. Not because he's cold, but because he's clear. And when she meets a man like that, a man who would walk the same path, whether she's there or not, she softens, not because he's gentle, but because he's grounded. And groundedness calms the storm inside her. This is what most men miss. The more you chase approval, the more you lose her trust. But the less you need it, the more powerful your presence becomes. So if you've been mistaking constant motion for purpose, if you've been chasing dopamine and calling it drive pause, ask yourself, what am I building that would still matter in silence? That's the question that shapes you. That's the energy she can't walk away from. If this resonates, type it below. I move with purpose. Because real purpose doesn't need a performance, it just needs proof in how you live. Number 7. Her hidden yearning to be led without being controlled. Let me share a quiet moment I once witnessed, not because it was loud, but because of how deeply it showed the essence of masculine leadership. At a small-town train station in Virginia, an elderly couple waited for a delayed train. They looked to be in their 70s. The woman was visibly upset, shoulders tight, her voice sharp, anxious and frustrated. The man, he didn't react. He didn't try to out-talk her feelings. He didn't correct her tone. He simply looked at her, nodded, gently lifted the heavy bag from her shoulder, and said absolutely nothing. No lectures, no resistance, just presence. And something shifted. Her posture softened, her breath released, her voice calmed. That was not control. That was direction. It wasn't force. It was quiet leadership. And that moment revealed something powerful, something most men completely overlook. Women don't secretly crave to be controlled. They crave to feel safe enough to stop leading all the time. Because many modern women have spent years, even decades, holding everything together, taking charge, keeping order. But underneath that strength is a quiet exhaustion, a longing to finally exhale. And the man she trusts most isn't the one who dominates the conversation or demands attention. It's the man who doesn't flinch when things get messy. The man who doesn't crumble under emotional storms, who doesn't need to be right, who doesn't chase comfort. He simply holds the room steady. He doesn't need her approval to stay grounded. And that's what draws her closer. Not words, Not charm, but a calm energy that doesn't waver. That kind of presence doesn't shout. It anchors. And in anchoring her emotions, without controlling them, he becomes unforgettable. If that resonates with you, type it below. I lead through calm. Not because you have to say it, but because it's time to be it. And what's coming next is a force even quieter than leadership, but 10 times more magnetic. Number 8. Her vulnerability to words that paint new worlds. There's a truth about women most men overlook, but neuroscience has known it for years. Women don't just hear emotional language, they feel it. Deeply. They carry it longer, remember it clearer, and respond to it more intensely than men do. Not because they're fragile, but because they're wired for emotional resonance. When you speak with intention, with presence, with emotional clarity, you don't just say words, you shift her internal world. Let's make something clear, this isn't about using poetic lines or rehearsed charm. That fades. It always does. What lasts, what breaks through her guard, is authentic communication rooted in depth. If you're grounded in who you are, your words won't be thrown like darts. They'll land like anchors. She doesn't need perfection. She doesn't need grand speeches. She needs a man who speaks from alignment, from inner clarity, from stillness. Stoicism teaches that your words reflect the state of your mind. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Take that one step further. Her heart becomes dyed with the color of your words. You don't need to impress her. You need to be present enough that your words carry your essence. That's what makes you unforgettable. That's what moves her beyond surface attraction, because women may hear thousands of compliments in their lifetime, but one sentence, spoken in calm presence and true intent, can echo in her mind for years. So the next time you open your mouth, ask yourself, are you just filling space, or are you painting meaning? Speak from stillness. Speak from depth, and watch her entire energy change. Now type it below, I speak with vision, and mean it, because your words have always mattered more than you thought, not just to her, but to the world you shape around you. Number 9, the unspoken need for a man who can walk away. Let me tell you a story about Samuel. He's a 58-year-old retired firefighter I met at a quiet park bench in Oregon. Samuel wasn't loud, boastful, or overly expressive, but the moment you sat next to him, there was a stillness you could feel. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that holds it, without even trying. As we talked, he told me about Mia, a woman he met after years of rebuilding his life alone. She was sharp, confident, a woman who had learned to protect herself in every room she walked into. But something changed when she was around Samuel, not because he tried to outshine her, fix her, or show her he was the man. He just listened. When she vented, he didn't offer a checklist of solutions. He didn't interrupt with reassurance. He simply let her storm pass without resistance. And over time, something happened that caught even her off guard. She softened. She started reaching for his hand without realizing it. Her voice slowed down. Her laugh sounded less like armor and more like music. Why? Because Samuel didn't flinch. His silence wasn't indifference. It was safety. He wasn't there to prove anything. He was there to hold space, not with dominance, but with presence. That's the secret most men miss. Women don't need you to fix their world. They need to feel like they can put their guard down in yours. That's emotional safety, not through control, but through unwavering calm. A man like that doesn't chase chaos, and he doesn't fear distance. He doesn't raise his voice to assert value. He is valued simply by being rooted in who he is, whether anyone applauds it or not. This is Stoicism in motion, calm, grounded, undeniable. You don't become unforgettable by forcing her to open up. You become unforgettable when she chooses to melt in the space you created by standing still. As Marcus Aurelius said, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. So be the space where she exhales. Be the man who doesn't beg for trust, but earns it with how he sits, how he breathes, how he stays calm when everything else tries to pull him out of character. And if this resonates with you, type it below. I create safe space. Because the man she remembers isn't the one who chased her energy. It's the one who gave her the peace to stop running. Let's not sugarcoat it. If you've watched this far, you're no longer chasing validation. You're done playing small. What we exposed wasn't just her patterns. It was your silence, your presence, your power slipping through when you tried to please. Watch this again. Let it sting. Then move like a man who doesn't flinch. Like a man who knows her chaos ends where your calm begins. If this hit deep, type it below. I lead in stillness. And if you're done being invisible to the world, subscribe, share, and walk forward quietly powerful. This channel is for men who don't just react, they become